Our next speaker is Lydia Sumer, who is Professor of Archaeology and History of Art at the Arkin University of Creative Arts and Design in Kyrenia, Cyprus. She studied classical archaeology at the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, receiving her PhD in 1996, and completed her habilitation thesis at the same university in 2005. She has conducted excavations at the Roman city of Pompeiopolis in northern Anatolia from 2006 to 2016, and archaeological surveys at Tatarlı and Karaburun in Turkey from 2008 to 2011. She carried out a repatriation and restoration project on the looted painted wooden tomb chamber Tatarlı in Phrygia from the 5th century BC and curated a temporary exhibition on the same subject in Istanbul in 2010. She's co-edited the catalog of that exhibition and 2 volumes about the Lycia Apamea Kibotos royal residence of the Achaemenid kings in Anatolia, and she's published several articles on Anatolia and Cyprus, and is currently carrying out a project on the final reconstruction of the Tatarlı tomb chamber for the new museum at Afyonkarahisar. So her talk today is on tomb paintings of Achaemenid Anatolia between East and West. Please welcome Lydia to the podium.
I'm really delighted to be here and to report, to talk about my project on the tomb paintings. I have no text, and I will not repeat what I have already published on text. I will not deliver a whole description of these tombs. I will be speaking about 2 tombs, Tatarlı, here, near Keleni, the only Achaemenid royal residence in Anatolia, and the other tomb is here in the Elmalı Play, not far from each other. You see here from the outside the Karaburun tomb, and here the Tatarlı tomb chamber built with wooden beams, while Karaburun is a stone-built structure. Why I prefer to compare these 2 tombs is simple, because these are the only tombs where we have almost complete image program. And while from other tombs, we have several other tombs with fragmentary wall paintings, but these both tombs are the only ones which deliver us with the complete image program, or almost complete, let's say. I'm not repeating the story around the tomb chamber of Tatarlı. It was looted 1969 and rescue excavated by the Museum of Afyon 1970. I casually rediscovered some beams in Munich in 2001, and it was a very long story of fighting and a project of repatriation, and we finally brought all stolen parts, including 38 pieces from New York, from the Institute of Dendrochronology at the Cornell University, and exhibited the reconstructed tomb in 2010 in Istanbul. But the museum on Afyon was not appropriate for a reconstruction there, and the Ministry of Culture in Turkey, they built for this tomb chamber a new museum, a huge museum. It took 13 years. It's just completed, and we reconstructed for a final installation the tomb chamber again. It will be opened on 19th of April. Okay, I move now. I will provide you here with a 360-degree rotation. Now I pass to the Karaburun tomb. It's again, it's a dark year, 1969. It's a dark year in Turkish archaeology. All tombs were looted and rescue excavated by Maktet Melink in 1970 and restored by Bryn Mawr College 71 to 74. And wall paintings is again, the tomb chamber again relooted, and the most beautiful parts of the paintings were stolen. I was fortunate to have an opportunity to take proper photos in 2010 when we were organizing the exhibition in Istanbul, and it was the base for a 3D reconstruction. You see the main frieze over the Kline. We have a symposium scene, and to the north wall we have a procession scene, and we are proceeding now towards the entrance, and at the entrance wall on both sides, two elderly men were represented. This one we were able to reconstruct with strange clothing. And on the south wall we have a battle frieze, and strangely this battle frieze stops at that point. The scale of the figures changes immediately because these two standing figures belong to the symposium scene over the Kline. In Karaburun tomb, everything was painted. The floor and the ceiling and the Kline. And this is, although the technique is not very well studied, we know that it was a fresco painting, while we have in Tatarlı tomb a secco, rather a secco painting. It is painted directly on the wood, on the smoothed surface of the wood. These both tombs are built approximately at the same time, about 470, 475. But they are quite different. They are quite different in design. In Tatarlı, we find narrow friezes, narrow registers. This is a traditional Near Eastern tradition or archaic tradition. And dense compositions with dozens of figures, and a boustropedon, a ox-turning arrangement of friezes, because the direction of movement differs. You see here at the top, you see here antithetic phalanx and two pairs of warriors with sickly shaped swords, which I interpret now as weapon dancers rather than dueling warriors. And we have a procession of chariots here. These are war chariots because of these quivers. And here again, the scale of figures changes. Unfortunately, this part is not very well preserved, and we were able to reveal that we have here with this winged course, we have here the representation of a Greek myth. This is Heracles' deed against Geryon. This is surprising that we have in Phrygia such a Greek myth, and this composition goes back to the 7th century. We have similar representations of this myth from the Greek art, East Greek art. For example, a bronze pectoral from Samos from the 7th century. And in opposite to the Tatarlı tomb, in Karaburun, we have a single frieze, and few figures, but big figures. We have here an example of Greek megalography, and almost, especially the figures of this dignitary of the symposium scene, it is almost life-size figures. The main frieze continues on the neighboring wall. This is something extraordinary, and movement does not change as was the case in Tatarlı tomb, but goes towards the entrance. These are the differences, these two different concepts of design of these paintings. The subject matter also differs. We have in Tatarlı pairs of felines and weapon dancers mid cattle of Geryon. A symposium scene most probably was represented here. We have traces of a seated figure, chair here, and the cleaner stood most probably here. But I have to note that the tomb, this tomb chamber was looted already in antiquity in the Roman periods for the secondary burials. That's why this part is almost wholly destroyed. And finally, we have a convoy scene and a battle scene. In Karaburun, we have no myth at all. We have a symposium scene. This is the main frieze above the cleaner. And we have a war representation, a battle frieze, and a convoy here, and two elderly men on both sides of the entrance. As regards the color compositions, we have in Tatarlı red, black, white, and green. These are the colors used in this. While in Karaburun, the color composition are more complex because it involves blue, green, and purple, and in very particular places. As you see, the mane of this horse is given also blue, and the trousers, the costume of the Persian hero, and the mantle of the symposiast is also green, but I have to say that this green little bit retouched by the team of Magdet Melling at that time. I mean, we are speaking here of about the 70s at that time. Retouchings were not seen problematic. As regards the figure types, in Tatarlı, in Karaburun tomb, we have Greek figure types. You see here the head of a Greek warrior, and we find almost exact counterparts in the Greek tomb painting from Paestum and Magna Graecia, while in Tatarlı, the figure types follow the models of the Persepolis heartland. As regards the style, in Tatarlı, we find with these angled eyes rather parallels in the early classical towards mid of the 5th century. For example, in this example of the Penthesilea painter, while for Karaburun, as you see this rendering of eyes, finds its parallels at the vases of the Achaemenids, for example, although both tombs are later. I mean, maybe Tatarlı tomb is a little bit later than the Karaburun. If one asks what is here Achaemenid, why these paintings are Achaemenids, as you see, the subject matter, themes, clothing, headgears, hair and beard style, utensils with vases, jewelry, fans, and saddle clothes, tied horse tails. These are Achaemenid motifs, but what we lack here into a big difference, the mainland, heartland of Iran, is winged sun or the representation of Ahura Mazda totally lacks. This is the reconstruction. We have here reclining dignitary to servants here with fans. These are typical and towel. And but I mean, from the profile of this woman, probably a wife of this dignitary of another servant. This style is very much as the Sever style in the Greek art. And although the painter of this tomb was extraordinary and it's really excellent quality, but he painted two left hands for this woman. He did a major error from the technical view of painting, but otherwise the paintings are extraordinary. As you see here, the symposium scene continues here, and these two servants here, they are, I mean, the dead body. By the way, the tomb owner, deceased, was a man around 50, and he might be a local elite. The preceding speakers were telling about them, but we don't know exactly the identity of the deceased. And the cleaner itself on the front was decorated with some the animals, cows, and a dog here. And if we compare this symposium scene with the Greek paintings, for example, with the Culics by Duris, about 485, we find exactly same iconography, but the details are different. For example, as Margaret Miller pointed out, how the dignitary holds his cup is quite different than this one on the tips of his fingers. This is an Achaemenid style of drinking. And but otherwise, it's very close. Of course, the servants are different. Serving how the wine is served is quite different. I mean, much has been written about the about the clothing of this dignitary, for example, about whether or not this chiton is cupacis, but with the decoration of the rim of the cloth looks like very much like the Achaemenid court dress. I will not discuss this. I will just point out the seals, because the man there is a string, as you see, and we don't see what is hanging underneath cloth, but most probably is hanging a seal like this, and so we have an idea how these seals were used, and maybe this characterizes the man as a holder of a position, probably. The headgear of the man was never a subject of investigation, because everyone says this is an extraordinary, unusual headgear. But what was it? I'm started a project to study this headgear, and this just to give you a glimpse of my new investigation is I cannot explain this headgear as a cushion-like base. I mean, it's called Wulfskranz in German. It's something, it must be soft, but I don't understand why it's slanting in that manner here. And we have this in the Hellenistic times in Dionysian figures very often. And as you see, it was tied at the back. It was not worn like, it was not put on the head, but it was tied at the back. And it's the same at this figure. And as regard these leaves, and as his earring shown white, probably it was meant as a gold leaf wreath. And I propose now this reconstruction. I do not know how this checkered pattern happens here. Probably on the cushion-like base, maybe gold material was twisted, and in some areas blue precious stones were applied, but I'm still working on this. Just okay. We have here the battle scene, and when we compare the battle scene of Tatarlı with the battle scene in Karaburun, we see enormous differences. Firstly, we have two separate parties in Tatarlı, as you see. This is the Persian army, and these are the Scythians, pointed-head Scythians. They are very well indicated. Some of them are already dead, as you see, and some are about to die. And this Persian hero in the middle is killing someone. And the Persian army includes a chariot. This is very important because we know that at that time, after the 7th century, the Persian army didn't use chariots at all. That means the models of these representations are very old. These are not contemporaneous. Very different iconography is shown in Karaburun. The Persian hero counterpart from this. He's riding, he's shown on a horse, and he's riding over the dead soldiers, enemies, which are shown as Greek hoplites. And we have two groups here. The adversary armies are not clearly separated as here, but in groups, and these two are Greeks, and this one is from the side of Persian. And while the Tatarlı tomb follows Achaemenid glyptic imagery, and in Taksai tomb we have also a war chariot, and war chariots were used in the Assyrian army, but not in the Achaemenid army. As you see here, this model, Persian hero trampling a dying enemy, is known from the glyptic, of course, although exact parallels are to be found yet. As you see, these are several examples from the glyptic showing the Persian hero trampling over a dead body from the enemies. A new stele from northeastern Phrygia, Bozhöyük, shows a similar scene. We see here the Persian hero riding over dead body, and this is also taken, the individual models are taken from older iconography. We can show this. This is another paper, I think. I cannot describe this interesting new grave stele here, but I want to draw your attention to these three, possibly two captive enemies. This is the iconography known from the Byzantine relief, but also from the sigillography. This is actually very interesting. So, in sum, we have in Tatarlı 12 soldiers of the Persian army and elf-pointed head Scythian Saka. Whether or not we should connect this representation with Darius' Scythia campaign of the 513 or not, this is another question. I'm not discussing this, but in Karaburun, 3 Persians are combating against 5 Greeks. And this might be connected with Sardes 498, perhaps, or with another combat, I don't know. The procession scene is much debated. It's controversial. In my opinion, it's a funerary procession, but there are other people who think that is a military convoy scene. And we find here a dignitary again wearing a kandus with for trimming bashlikia. This undergarment is again rendered in purple, and we find exactly this, not exactly, but approximately same procession scene in Tatarlı, but we have much more figures, 21 human figures, and 3 women here, for the first time. And here, soldiers and 17 horses and 2 chariots, again, 2 chariots here. And what is most interesting and symbolic, in my opinion, we have here a saddled but riderless horse, and the same motif, it's repeated here, and this saddle is lady's saddle, as you see with the raised front. These are iconographic details which surely have meaning, but we are not able to understand them wholly because we still lack other comparisons. And this closed chariot, these people are moving in chariot and on foot and on chariot and horses, but where they are going, and obviously this is there is a certain occasion for which this convoy is made, but as I said, it is in the literature still debated, and there are several interpretations for this. Again, I sum up. We have 2 tomb chambers from the same time. We have some Achaemenid motifs in it, but it is indeed not Achaemenid because winged sun and Ahura Mazda is not represented. We have Greek myth in Tatarlı, no mythos in Karaburun, and narrow friezes in archaic or oriental manner in Tatarlı, but megalography, big figures in Karaburun. I mean, these are not the only graves, and this comes from a certain tradition. Indeed, in Lydia, we have life-size figures in the tumulus tomb chamber in Harta, but these are too fragmentary. But obviously, as you see, this is the back part of a horse with the tied tail of a horse, a young attendant on foot is going here. This is probably a procession scene, but we are unable to compare them with the Karaburun scene, convoy scene. But this shows us that there were certain subject matters, certain themes which were appropriate to be represented in grave chambers. Then we have in Gordion, in the so-called painted house, life-size figures, wall paintings. This is most probably, this painted house was a sanctuary, most probably again a procession scene. And earlier in time, we have from Urartian wall paintings. That means the wall painting tradition were present all in Anatolia and in Urartu, and of course in Assyrian wall paintings from Tilbarsi from the 8th century show us in the Near Eastern tradition decorated, polychrome decorated walls is evident. Whether or not the Achaemenid palace in Persepolis were decorated in inner walls with figurative reliefs, we don't know. But as we have evidence now from Uzbekistan, Akjakala, it's possible, of course. And what happened in Anatolia in the Achaemenid, in early Achaemenid period, is that the Attic vase paintings, the models in Achaemenid in Attic vase paintings were used to create new styles and adapted for the Achaemenid themes to represent the local elite. There are open questions on the purpose of these tomb paintings. Are they biographical narratives or generic representations of male virtue? Or are they visual concepts of rhetoric, eulogy, or laudatio funebris? They must have, because, I mean, they were visible only during the funerary ceremonies, and afterwards they were closed with the dead body. Or the second question I'm interested in is the identity of the Persian era. Is he the Greek king of or local elite of the deceased himself? But I will not discuss these questions today here. My time is limited here. Maybe later we can speak about it. Thank you.